Hello. This video is going to cover exercises for object-oriented programming principles. We're going to take a look at some things that we have kind of done before, but I want to emphasize in particular what are the principles of object-oriented programming that we're actually implementing when we are working with the classes that we're working with in C++. In our first exercise, we're going to make a art class, and it's going to have basically the idea of representing what it is to be visual or performance art. And we're going to put some attributes in there, constructor, and we're going to display everything. So let's try this out. So making a new file. I should probably call this, so this will be art.cpp. Or I guess we'll do art.h and then we'll do the CPP after. Probably I should get a make file for this as well. Let me see if I can snag one from before. I think we had a make file that we did over here, right? Yeah, this will do. I just want a really simple one. I want to be able to reuse it over and over. So let's copy this. And the only thing I need to change is the name of the source files. So my make file is going to rely on art.cpp, and the executable, we'll call this one art project. Why not? My make file here is going to be really simple. It's just going to take, it's going to just build my art project, which is going to rely on all my object files, which is going to be based on my CPP files that are all in the directory. So nothing too fancy. My art class is a class called art. My art class needs to have, we'll just give it all public attributes for now. So we need to have a string title, which means I need to include and use the standard namespace. And we're going to have our title, we'll have our artist, the year. We need a constructor, which will initialize these things. Title will be T. Artist will be A, year will be Y. And a method to display this information, void display, and we'll just output title by artist was made in year. Keep it real simple. Let's do this, just make it look a little nicer. There we go. Okay, probably I should, since my art is really short, I don't even think I'm going to make a an art.cpp. If my class gets longer, then perhaps I will. But for a class this short, I'm just going to make a header file and we'll include it in my main. So let's make a main. And we will include art.h. Main. I don't need any command line arguments here. Let's just make some art. And let's make it, let's see, Mona Lisa. Artist is Da Vinci. When was the Mona Lisa made? It was made in, give me a date. Completed in, may have been working on it in 1517, so we'll go with that. A.display. All right, let's see if we can build this thing. Make. Oops, sorry, the file's not called art.cpp, it's just main.cpp. There we go. My art project. Okay, great. Now, this exercise was obviously very short, very simple, and the concept that we're going for here is the concept of abstraction, and it's this idea that I can represent any kind of art using this class. Art usually has a title, even if the title is just untitled. It will have an artist, somebody made it, otherwise, it's not art, and there was a year that it was made. Obviously, there are other things that may go into art potentially, but we at least have an idea of what this art thing is, and we can display it using our code. And so that's all we have to start out with. Then we can proceed further by delving into some of our other principles. Okay, I'm also going to put all this into the first folder. Whoop. Oh, do I have a make clean here? I should do a make clean. Clean rm-f star.o and the executable name. I want to make sure that I can clean things up properly. Okay. So now I think if I go here and I make clean, it should get rid of the stuff that I don't want. Is that good? Yeah. They're gone now. H make file. Yep, sounds good. Okay. Next exercise. We want to modify our art class, making all the attributes private and providing public methods to get them. Then we'll add an art type variable to the class, which is set in the constructor, to value that denotes what its type is, such as a visual. And this is not the cleanest way to do things, but it is a way that we can figure out, is our art meant to represent something visual or something else? So back over here, we're going to make a copy of these in a second folder, example 2. Okay. So now I want to make this stuff private rather than public. So it's easy enough to do that. Now we do want to keep the rest of this public. The private stuff, which I'll put at the bottom here. And the reason I'm putting private things at the bottom here is that you really want your header to represent immediately the stuff that's most important to people who are using it. So if I need functions to get the title, they should go here right away so people can know how to get the title. Get title, return the title. But how the title's actually, represented in the computer as a string here isn't something that's as important. We can just use the get title for any practical uses of what we're doing here. Anything that goes in private really isn't supposed to be something that people using your code need to know, and so you should just put it somewhere where it's less visible. Now we need more gets. We need a get for the artist as well. Artist, return the artist. We need the year, which is an int. Return the year. So now we have getters, and then we need setters. So set title, given a title, should set the title to be that. And same kind of idea for our artist and year. Year is y, which is an int set the year. We'll also add an art type variable, which is set in the constructor to something. So we'll modify this here to string at, and we'll give it a art type. And here the art type will be at. And we can say here that the thing by the thing is the art type, art that was made in the year. Okay, so now what we've done is we've encapsulated things. We have changed our class. So instead of just having everything as this publicly accessible object, instead we now provide specific interfaces through which people who are using our art class can access the data that they need to ask. If I wanted to, I could add in some restrictions here. Maybe the year needs to be a 4-digit number, for example. Or if it's going to be BC, then I maybe need to do some other tweaking of it. But I have the control over that now if I want to. The variables themselves are now restricted, so people cannot access them. My display function can, because it's still part of my art class, but if I have a main function, it should no longer be able to access the title, artist, or year. Fortunately, that's okay, because my main function doesn't need to access those things. If I do need to access them, I can use the getter functions that are available. I suppose I now need a getter function for the art type, so I'll add that as well. Let's add get art type, return the art type. And let's modify our main, because right now our main doesn't mention that this is a visual art. And now let's make it and run it again. Make, and go. And there we have it. Okay, so we've now encapsulated our data so that it's not going to be accessible to people who don't need to use it. And we've provided some getters and setters so that if you do need to change things, you have the ability to do so. So that wraps up exercise 2. Let's move right along. In our third exercise here, we are going to look at inheritance. So here we're going to make kinds of art, visual art and performance art. And we're going to add something specific to each one to make them different. So here is where I want to, okay, first of all, let's again make a copy of some of this stuff. Clean everything up for me, thanks. And I'll take these, copy them again, make a new folder and put them in here. And now we're going to make some new art. Okay, so this one will be called visual.h. This will refer to our visual art. And it's going to need to include art.h. And now we know right away that we're going to be including art.h a bunch of times. So we should, at the very top of this, put in pragma once. Make sure I don't include it too many times. Okay, and here I'll have a class called visual art. But now I need to do something special, which is that I need to mention that visual art is not just a brand new object that comes from nowhere. It in fact inherits from art. It is a kind of art. And so you can see kind of here in the slides what this looks like, is that your inherited class, a student is a person, visual art is a kind of art, needs to be followed by a colon. And then in addition to the name of what you're inheriting from, you also need to say how are the functions changed from the public part of the original class. So for instance, if my original class over in art has a void display, should that become private or should that be something accessible to visual? So this is going to, for now we'll say we'll inherit it publicly because that most of the time is what you want to do. And here we're going to have a new variable, which, what did it say we should have? Size, or let's do it size. So double size, and this is, square inches, something like that. In our constructor. And so here is where we want to do a little bit of taking advantage of the fact that we have code that exists already. There's no point duplicating this stuff if it's already here. So what we should do is, for our visual art constructor, it's also going to take all this same stuff, except it doesn't need to take an art type, because we know that the art type of visual art is visual. It's kind of already given to us, right? So in our constructor, we need to have all these things. But now instead of assigning them to title and to our artist and year, what we can actually do is just call our art constructor. We've already built a constructor over here that assigns all the things that are necessary. So let's just call it. And we'll pass it DAY and visual, because we know it's going to be visual art. And look at that. This is the shortest constructor, but it does actually a whole ton of stuff. With this call, it puts in all the variables that you need to put in addition to putting in visual. And I suppose we also need to have a size. So here we need our double S. And so in addition to the art here, we'll also need to say the size is S. Now, we want to override the display function. We also want to be able to display, and we want to display things slightly differently. Now, that being said, we can again take advantage of the fact that our art class already has a display method. So in order to use this one, I believe we want to do something like, let me see here. I believe the way we want to do this is by writing art : display. Because we are an art object, so we should be able to call the display method from our parent. In addition to outputting, it is size square inches. And so now we've made this pretty short function here, is our short class, I should say, but it happens to take advantage of the fact that we have already written so much of this code for art that we don't really need to do all of it again. Now, let's see if we can modify our main to take advantage of it. So here we're going to include visual.h, which by extension includes art.h. And here, instead of making art, we'll make visual art, VA, and we'll call display and see what happens. We don't need to pass visual, but we do need to pass the size. The Mona Lisa is 30 by 21 inches, so that's what, 630 square inches? 30 times 21, 630, yeah? Okay, 630 square inches. Oop. Okay, let's try it. Make. And go. And look at that. Our Mona Lisa object that we created in our main is a kind of visual art. As visual art, it can display by calling the art's display function, as well as print out the fact that it is this many square inches. Now, something important to note is that we now no longer have access to specifically this display function of VA. So from our visual art, we're always using the display function of the fact that it is visual art. Now, I believe this exercise said we also want to make a performance art class. So that one's going to look very similar to our visual art, so I'm just going to duplicate it. This one is performance art. Performance art. And here we want a length instead of a size. We'll say it's seconds, and we'll say it's length seconds long. And look at that, this is really, really short, and I've already made a performance art class in almost no time. Oops, gotta make sure I mention it's performance art. Let's make some in our main. So, what's the, what's that song that came out recently? Kendrick Lamar made a thing. Kendrick song title. Was it Not Like Us? Is that the one? Not Like Us. Can I get a duration on it? 4 minutes 34 seconds. 2024. Sure. So performance art. PA. Not Like Us. Kendrick Lamar. Years 2024. Duration is 4 minutes and 34 seconds, which means I'm adding 240. Is that right? Yeah, 240 to this. So it's 274 seconds. PA.display. And let's try it. Make. Oh, what did I mess up? Oh, I forgot to include performance art. That would help. Performance. Make. Oop, I passed S, but I should be passing L for length. Make. I should do a make run, because I'm just going to be making and running. There's no point having two separate ones. So let's do run, which depends on the executable. And the command will simply be / the executable name. Make run. Hey, there we go. All right. So this is a display of inheritance. We have made two classes that take us very little time to build because we can take advantage of the fact that both of them use a ton of code that we've already written inside of our art class. Probably I should also add a getter and setter for these new variables. So I should have a double get size, return size, and void set size to set the size. And same thing for my performance art, except it's length instead of size. Length L, length L. But it takes me very little time to do it. Because I can use inheritance for this, rather than making a whole brand new class from scratch that needs to have all this stuff in here. I can just use the fact that it's already there, because all visual and all performance art is ultimately still art. Okay, that wraps up, I think, our third exercise. Let's move on to the last one. So for the last one, we're kind of just going to be extending things another step down. But I also want to illustrate what happens when you combine all of this stuff together. So let's clean things up first. And I'll take all of this and copy it into exercise 4. Okay, in our fourth exercise, we're just going to make some specialized classes. We'll make painting as a kind of visual art, sculpture as a visual art, song and dance for performance art as well. And we're going to see how quickly we can do this, because the goal is mostly just to show that you can use this inheritance property to effectively make these things. But I also would like to see what happens if I can put all of these, for instance, in some kind of array and go through them all. So here, let us make a new file. So I think we had painting, was it? And here we'll include visual, because painting is a kind of visual art. Just remember what I'm doing here. Painting and sculpture. So perhaps actually what I might do is I'll simply build one of these, painting, and I'll leave sculpture, song, and dance as some exercises for you to practice. But here, since I'm going to be including visual, I should definitely pragma once my visual header. Sure. And now I have a class called painting, which will inherit from visual art. Here we'll have a string type of paint. We'll also have a constructor painting that needs to take all the same stuff that visual art takes. But I also need to have the type of paint, TOP. And here I want to call the visual arts constructor with TAYS, as well as set the type of paint. Again, trying to do this as efficiently as possible, duplicating as little code as necessary. So now I'll do all the stuff that visual art will handle. I want my own display function, where here I will once again use visual arts display function, but then I will output it was painted using the type of paint. And then I'll add my getters and setters for the type of paint. We'll call this type of paint, set type of paint. And just like that, I already have my painting. So now we can update our main. Now, what was Mona Lisa painted using? I think it's oil, but I want to double check. Oil, yeah. So in my main here, I can change this to include painting painting paint.display. Dimensions and type of paint is oil. Okay, and now something I want to do is I want to display everything here. Right now I make each one and I display them, but what happens if I do the following? So let's comment this out. Let's comment this out for a second. And let's say that I make a art array of pointers. And I'll just have 2 because I only need to put 2 in it. So we'll make an array of 2 art pointers. We'll call this arts equals art pointer array 2. Sure, we'll do it dynamically, why not? New art pointer 2. Arts 0 is the address of paint, and arts 1 will be the address of PA. For I0, I less than 2, I plus plus, I want to take arts I and call its display method, and let's see what happens. Okay, launcher, go here, make run. Oh, we got some errors. What did I mess up? Type of paint is not a double, so I should fix that. It's a string. Oh yes, so arts is not a single pointer, it should be a double pointer because it is a array of pointers. I suppose I could make it just spot for 2 arts and then just put the art in there. I think that should work. Yeah, let's do that instead. Which means I can then do arts.display. Okay, clear all this up. Make run. What do I got now? There's no matching call for making an art object with no with nothing in it. So I need to add a constructor here that does that. Okay. Let's clear, make run. Now, something to note. My code has done what I've asked it to do. And you may say that it did not work, but that's because we haven't learned what we're going to learn in the next class. Notice that unlike my code from before, and I'll show by commenting this out and putting some spaces here. Make run. So note that my expectation, what I would like, is for everything to be printed as using the display function that it has. But it turns out right now we're not at a part where I can do that. And the reason is when I make everything, when I put everything into my art array, which I'm allowed to do, performance art, paintings, visual art, these are all just kinds of art. So it's totally fair for me to put in as art objects my paint and my performance art. But there is a catch. Because I have told the computer that everything in arts here is art, I haven't told it that everything in here is specifically performance art, painting, etc., etc. And so the issue with this is that now this means that when I go to display each piece of art, it can only use the most basic display method available to me. And it won't be until next class that we see how can we make it so that this code in our main will display the proper display method for each different kind of art. And that's a mystery that if you would like to solve on your own, I encourage you to do so. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video where we will figure it out together. Take care, everybody.